Well, good evening, everyone. It is such a pleasure to be here for so many reasons. First of all, I'm originally from Brockton, Mass., home of champions, and I remember coming here to there we go, right, yes, marvelous Marvin Hagler, and I remember coming here, Tim, back when this was one building and the dinosaur only had a head. So it is a great honor to be here. The other thing is that my relationship with Harvard Business School, the Harvard Business School is where I started my professional career. So I got a degree at Harvard College, got my MBA there, and then my doctorate, and actually did my doctorate on the economic implications of adopted expert systems in 1986. And so it is, and I taught on the faculty there for a dozen years. So it's wonderful to be here. I have great love and affection for the institution, and it's great to be able to have that. And most importantly, the reason I'm happy to be here is that I really believe, and it's why Paul Beyer and I started this company, that we are at an inflection point where, from a particular point of view, we are returning to a renaissance. And what I mean by that is when you look at generative AI, it is categorically different for two fundamental reasons. First of all, it's the first time in the long history of automation that the machines are talking back, okay? And that is profound. The second thing is, if you understand anything about the way the models work, they have matrix math at the middle of them, and in that you have a multidimensional semantic matrix that is allowing us to munch down reality, different data types, and to navigate it in human time, not infinite time, searching that space. And that is a renaissance in the sense of being able to do all kinds of new analysis and to cross disciplines, and as Leonardo da Vinci did, go all the way from art to engineering to warfare to science and back again. And from that point of view, we are very, very lucky to have these two participants on our panel. Joan and Luba, if you could come, and I'll do a little introduction here. Here we have two unbelievable Renaissance professionals. So, Joan Laverere, I was in visual and environmental studies at Harvard College, so was Joan. But Joan also did the hard part of pre-med, which I didn't do. And Joan has got her master's in engineering from St. Andrews. She's got her MD from Columbia. She's got her MBA from Sloan, and her undergraduate degree, as I say, both in pre-med and in art. And you'll see in her work and her experience, she is a Renaissance professional. Luba Greenwood, among her, in addition to being an attorney and actually writing on things like the enforcement of the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act early in her career, she also has been a Renaissance professional. When she was head of business development at Roche, she was the first person to bring biopharma into the Flatiron deal. For those of you who have followed that, that was a mega deal that completely changed the landscape of biotech and especially pharma, bringing them into life sciences at scale in the cancer area, if I remember right. And she also took that and went over to Google and helped Google build out Verily, their life sciences activity. And now she is CEO of Gallup Pharmaceuticals, that is applying new procedures and capabilities, and also has served on a number of boards and so forth. So in these two panelists, we have the best representatives of what I think is not only a domain that matters, but a way of thinking that I invite you all into, because I believe we're at the beginning of a renaissance of science and commerce like we haven't seen before. So welcome.
Thank you.
As part of this, we're going to start off with a few beginning comments, both from Joan and from Luba, in terms of setting the table, and then we'll get into a conversation about some of the key issues. Being an ex-professor, I'm going to give you kind of the answer where we hope to get to at the beginning of this, and we can discuss it. But there are three things that, in preparing for this, we wanted you to at least consider. What AI is enabling is, first of all, new discoveries in science that we've never had before. And you have to think of these capabilities not the whole anthropomorphization of generative AI and AI, I think, is a tremendous mistake. It's not about one person replacing, a robot replacing one person. We're not talking about a collective hive mind. Think of it more as, cockroaches meet bees, meet schools of fish, that you can call out any kind of intelligence that you want. It really is a hive mind that we're dealing with. And that's going to allow us to do science like we've never done before. There's an announcement by Google today about, a robot that helps scientists generate whole new ways of doing hypothesis and testing. So first thing. Second thing is, it's fundamentally changing the liquidity of knowledge. Now, what I mean by that is that we're going to see models, and we'll talk about some of these, and as consumers of healthcare, the ability to move medical knowledge and analysis down to your phone, out in rural areas, in places that never had that kind of knowledge before, is fundamental. And that liquidity of knowledge and intelligence is radically changing. And the third thing is, as we instrument the world, and we instrument our own bodies with Apple Watches, Fitbits, the environment that we're in, we are now able to take that massive amount of data and make sense of it as we codify and digitize that world, and to take all kinds of data types, unstructured, structured, traditional, non-traditional, and have new insights. So those three things, new science, liquidity of knowledge, and environmental understanding, including our body as an environment, we want you to think about as we go through this. So with that, Joan, you want to start us off?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Sean. I also remember coming here as a child, and it is very changed. It's wonderful to be here tonight. I'm going to give a couple of slides as some background, if I can make this work. Okay. So I am a physician at Boston Children's Hospital in cardiac intensive care. I'm also Associate Chief Medical Officer for Transformation. Happy to discuss how AI is impacting us there at the hospital. I am also co-founder and president of Virtue Foundation, which is an NGO with special consultative status to the United Nations. And that's really how my journey into AI started 15 years ago. And I want to talk a little bit about that tonight, and how we've used AI and now generative AI to map 72 low and middle income countries, and how that's going to really revolutionize how we can meet the supply-demand needs. So I have a brief video that'll just kind of summarize that first. It's an interesting use case of AI, so that's why I wanted to bring it. Virtue Foundation delivers clinical care and uses data science for good to impact global health and bring care to millions of people across the globe. What we're trying to do is continually refresh our foundational data set, how to create those mini knowledge graphs around each hospital, around each healthcare NGO. I think that is one of the most fundamental things that Databricks is assisting us with today. For the past 15 years, really under the vision of Dr. Abby Elahi, who I co-lead the Actionable Data Initiative with, we have been focusing on building an AI platform for global health. By being able to understand the situation on the ground, where are the hospitals and healthcare NGOs? What is the work that they're actually doing? We're able to take that data and match it up to the clinicians who actually can deliver at that specialist level. There's currently 143 million patients every year waiting for surgery in low and middle income countries. It's a really large problem. But if you can create efficiencies in the data, you're talking about millions of lives. The Databricks Gen AI capabilities has allowed us to refresh our foundational data set. I personally do pediatric cardiac intensive care. I want to understand where are opportunities to take care of children, and where could I be able to add skill, particularly in the care of complex patients post-operatively after cardiac surgery. Virtue Foundation's delighted to be a founding NGO for Databricks for Good. It's helping us to unlock data to bring impact at scale to millions of lives on the ground. So I think that summarizes well some of the work that we have been doing at Virtue Foundation in this space. And it's a really novel use of AI, because you see the burden, the 143 million people without surgery, almost 3 million disability-adjusted life years. How do you get to the granular level where you can bring that surgical team to the right place and deliver the right care? And I think one of the things that we started thinking about is this is a lemon market. Global health philanthropy is a lemon market. So Dr. Elahi, my colleague, he's an oculoplastic surgeon at Mount Sinai. He was like, the demand side, the people who really need us, can't make their needs known. And the supply side, surgeons like Dr. Elahi or a specialist like myself, there's so many frictions to get engaged. So if you start thinking this is a market problem, how do you solve for it? So that was really how we got down this AI pathway. Oops, I think it's gone forward. And seeing this data platform sitting in the center, the way you would of financial markets. So you can have big institutional investors, that's the Gates, the Gavis, the governments of countries working with the WHO or the World Bank. But you can have the day trader, the surgical missions, that can be then scaled. That domain of the small suddenly scales. And that brought us down this pathway of finding where are these healthcare NGOs, where are these hospital facilities. We assumed there'd be a data set. There wasn't. So we started using AI. This work was 2020. We started extracting from the web using keyword, creating a machine learning model to extract it. And then used, 20,000 human man-hours. So that's where the Gen AI becomes important. We published that and then published another book coming out later this year on our approach and put it onto this web platform. But there's two things that I think are really important, and John, you talked about this. It's the coupling of that foundational data with these other data sets. So we're coupling it with nightlight data. We're coupling it with road data, nurse density, nightlight, daylight, pollution, sunlight, and you start to get these incredible actionable insights. I'll just hop through that really quickly. That's just showing our raster maps. But the other piece that I think is very important as you think about use cases, the partnering, I think the enterprise-grade solution was what was so important for us. And we've partnered with Databricks, DataRobot, Carto to build something that's enterprise-grade and putting in those pipelines. And that's where the Gen AI piece comes in. I don't know why it's not moving forward, but we've created, and I'd love to talk more about that, this lens over the web. So you can extract multimodal data, read it, create those knowledge graphs that I mentioned.
So as I understand it, what you've put together is by taking available data on things like hospitals and capacity and so forth, then need data on top of that, then collecting, indexing, processing, collecting additional data on top of that. You essentially get a functional map of where you can have the biggest impact and where the knowledge and capacity needs to move around. Is that a fair way to think about it?
Exactly, which it's starting to show you here. This is, you can look at this like in an Airbnb type model. I can look at this specifically for me in pediatrics. I'm looking in Ghana, where are the volunteer opportunities, and it'll showcase for me. Now I can look more broadly across the globe. I can look to my needs. I'm a physician. I want to go to a place where I can use my Spanish. I want to be in an area with conflict. I want to be in an area that's safe. I can target it to me. And then the other piece that I can look and I can apply directly and work. So it's like the AI is now translated into a product that a physician can use to actively have impact on the ground. And then I think this will go over to a globe mode. Yeah. So you can, oh, sorry, didn't go forward. But you can start to look at the actual medical deserts. So I think I showed that raster map. It's not running, I think, which is a shame. It can start to show you where are the areas of need by specialty. So you can look at this map and see the populations those are the hospitals and the NGO opportunities. But I think it'll plug on the right side the layers of data that will start to show you the medical deserts. And we can look at that by specialty. So access to care, that should show up. Yeah. So the red is distance to hospital. The dark red, people are really far in terms of access to any type of care. Now you put on the actual capacity, that's in the green. So you can start to target those locations, those red spots. There's absolutely no care. And we can slice that by specialty and subspecialty. And you can start to match the resource to need.
It's just amazing. I mean, and the AI is helping you both identify as well as analyze data that might have previously been unstructured or unintegrable.
Absolutely. And so the work we're currently doing with Databricks is generative AI work, where you can take all the data that's created around a particular geotag location of a hospital, say in northern Ghana, and using their Delta structure, you can have structured and unstructured data living together.
Yes.
So the structured, we can run some of that analytics and the insights that you see, but the unstructured can sit there. You can extract it and structure it later if you want something else, or what we're also putting on top of it is a RAG, a conversational interface, where you can start asking it the questions you want answered.
Yes. So you can torture the data all you want,
Yes.
which is great. Awesome. We will get more into that. Luba.
Do you have a question?
But
before you have a question, I do have a comment.
Yes.
So first of all, I do want to say thank you to Gautam and Andrew for having me here. And I have to say, my favorite part of the video is why AI is great for augmenting people, especially healthcare providers in a healthcare system. And you can definitely tell by that video and you in it. I love that. And you actually being right there. So, yes, what would you like to cover?
What I'd love to cover is, as you've got a deep history in bringing really a whole new perspective from data and intelligence into pharma, biopharma, and in a certain way, and Joan and I were talking about this before, the long history of medicine has been basically to squish out a lot of the variability. If you go back in the history of the AMA, it was about fighting against the patent medicine knuckleheads and, just creating, care protocols that would then get spread around and then controlling, in a certain sense, controlling and augmenting the science of medicine. But now we have all this new data, and in a certain sense, it's kind of swimming upstream against that. Right? It's getting personalization, it's new kinds of interpretations. So, and the kind of work that you've done in terms of bringing data into that whole process. Talk to us a little bit about why you kind of headed down that path and what you see.
Yeah,
happening.
sure, absolutely, and what I see as well. So we're using. So it's interesting that you're saying data. Data is something that, and when we talk about AI, there really are two different areas that I want to talk about. One is AI that we talked about all the time before, which is you need to have the data, you need to structure the data, you need to have longitudinal data, you have, the best thing is proprietary data, and that's all we really focused over the last 10, 15 years, and it's exactly when you started out. Yep. Gen AI, LLMs brought in a completely different element, which have, I would say, stopped us from talking a lot about data, really. I mean, data is still very important, and it's still key to understanding and generating insights. It certainly is very important, for example, for drug discovery. We have a lot of data that you see in drug discovery we're utilizing in order to understand protein-to-protein interaction. We're looking into small molecule development. Most of the time, actually, AI that we can apply right now is mostly for development, I would say discovery using small molecules. So when you hear about that, AI is going to change our opinion and understanding of biology just because we know how one protein interacts with one molecule, and that happens to be a small molecule. It's a bit of a silly extraction to now think that we will understand all of biology. That is where we're moving, but we're still on the way there. The next frontier, and that's a lot of what I've been doing, is investing or running and starting companies in a drug discovery space where you have what's called a platform. Everybody likes to talk about a platform. But, at the end of the day, you have a certain insight that you have generated from a lot of data, usually I would say not multimodal data, but from one area of expertise or one type of data that you're generating in order to understand drug discovery. We learned that just applying AI is not enough for drug discovery. We now need to have AI and physics and other components. So that's all great. The next stage is we know that just because we can make an amazing molecule and we know that it will bind with no problems to a particular protein or that it will get into a cell with no problems, we still need to test this out on animals before us, human animals. And we know a lot of the discovery that we think it's just because it works, it does not really work in animals to begin with. And then even if it does, it's actually hard to make it into a drug that you can drug it. So you have to think about those aspects. So what's nice right now is we are using artificial intelligence now for development. So on the development where we're making taking a molecule, making it into an actual drug, and applying artificial intelligence towards that to, for example, predict safety, predict efficacy. A lot of work, you see a lot of biotechs that have been started up. Biotech is, I would say, is a tough business to go into. I've invested in many of them. I've ran a number of them. And a lot of the times, your drug does not necessarily work. It can be safe, but it does not mean that it's effective. So right now, we're also using artificial intelligence to predict, just because a drug did not work, it does not mean that you need to discard it. We've discarded so many drugs,
Yes.
and what we call shelved it. That's what big pharma does. And that's why sometimes you have biotech companies, you have companies like Reinventing that have had that model where they in-license something. But this is where generative AI comes in. That knowledge and understanding of sifting through enormous amount of data and understanding, you yourself applying your own process to understanding what is going to work in development for a particular indication, is something that we're now using generative AI. So it's not just, let's dump a lot of data, let's make a lot of basically assumptions, connections, correlations that may give us some insight, but it's really using generative AI to have almost an agent. So I'm sure you guys have heard agentic AI. So having an agent to help you make, and you, meaning drug delivery, drug discovery, a drug development person, understanding what drug is actually going to work. So that's on the drug discovery, drug development side that we've been working on. The second frontier, of course, is using generative AI for medicine. And that is, again, where we really struggled before generative AI, before large language models, to even do simple things such as differential diagnosis. So when a patient comes in, and by the way, for your business, I know you guys use it at Boston Children's Hospital and develop your own way of doing that. But when a patient comes into the hospital and says, I have diarrhea, I am obese, and I have a headache, most of the time a physician does kind of what all of you would do. Actually, not even. All of you guys would probably use ChatGPT. Unfortunately, they don't. They're like, I don't know. How about we run some tests and maybe a stool test, a urine, blood test, and I don't know, some other test. And then after that, but the problem is, you can be ordering enormous amount of tests and you don't know what to narrow down on. So the beauty now of LLMs is that you can actually train a model to be the best doctor, the best primary care. We don't often talk about primary care. We always talk about super specialty and very fancy doctors, but the ones that really make a difference are primary care. So you can get the insights from the best primary care, train a model to say, you know what, you just need to run these 3 tests because it probably is one of these 3 or 5 different diseases. And then you can run some of those tests and then predict what it is most likely. So,
Yeah. It's amazing. Luba, I just wanted you to, just because not everybody's in medicine, could you just give some examples of how people are taking multimodal data or, just as I understand the shelved compounds, some people estimate we've only explored maybe 1% of the available compounds that might be relevant for human health at the most, and the vast majority of those have been shelved. And so if you could just make it a little more concrete.
yeah, sure. So, okay, so on the drug discovery, drug development side. So the way that we make drugs is we usually tinker around in a lab, and we have an understanding from a paper that you read. A lot of the times, this is what researchers used to do. I don't know, with NIH cutting, not sure. But it used to be, that's what basic research, basic science is for, is to talk about, let's say, a certain protein. And they realize that a certain protein, if it, for example, blocks a certain pathway, then it will stop your immune system, let's say a T cell, which is part of your immune system, in recognizing a cancer cell. So what you're trying to do is you want to basically block that protein. You want to say, that's it. I want to block that protein from blocking that pathway because I want that immune cell to go and recognize the cancer cell to go and kill it. Now, there are different ways to block it. You can bind to it. You can basically literally bind to it and block it so it doesn't engage with anything else. You can degrade it. There are these things called degraders that you can literally just degrade it and kill the protein. There's so many different ways that now, and they're called modalities, we call them, which is basically a different way to engage a protein through various ways and also get to that protein. So that's called delivery. So we talk about delivery. That's why we like mRNA. Why do we like mRNA? Because that's the best way to actually go after and engage the protein or the target. Usually they are proteins that you want to engage. So we have the paper that says this is the protein that's responsible for basically not blocking immune system from recognizing cancer. And that's all it says. Great. Well, so first of all, who reads these things? I mean, by the way, they're not always published in Nature or anything like that. I mean, a lot of the times they're published in some random journals. So you first have to find that. Number two, let's say that you find that information, then you say, okay, I'm going to come up with a molecule that now attaches to this protein, and you have figured it out, and then you said, I am going to go after prostate cancer because, you know, some venture capitalists told me that that's a hot one, and I'm going to get a lot of money. Okay, so you're going after prostate cancer, you're making this, it takes you about 2-3 years to do what's called the development candidate, which is, well, actually more like 4 years. So you make this development candidate, it's basically the same molecule, but now you've attached it to the protein and you see if it works or not. So you make it, you're so proud of yourself, you're like, yes, okay. But now you're gonna put it into a mouse that basically represents a model of prostate cancer. So you put this into the mouse, does not work. You're like, oh, this is really bad. So, you know, what do? So the nice thing about AI is that now you can actually go in and you can, especially if you had an agent, because if you didn't have an agent, you have to literally go and search words and everything. You would have to go to ChatGPT. And by the way, if you're not at Harvard and you don't have the firewall, ChatGPT gets all of the information you're putting in. And so, you know, there's a lot of privacy, other issues that we can talk about. Don't worry, HBS is very good. They're very good. So whatever you're searching in ChatGPT, it's firewalled, so no problem. You're not losing any valuable information. But you have to literally go by hand and you have to find all of these papers. About 80% of the time, you're going to get actual papers. 20% is going to be made up stuff. Okay, so that's called hallucination. So you keep on going, and yes, ChatGPT is great. You're so excited, but then you get just really tired of it. So agentic AI is basically a way to copy you, the research scientist, where all you have to do, you train it and you say, okay, I'm going to go after and look at the list of pharma. By the way, pharma, they're not stupid, right? They're not going to just publish a list for you of all the things that are called shelves. So basically compounds that they're not interested in going after. So you have to figure out some of the sources and ways to get it. Also, not all papers, you can't really get access to some of the papers, and some of the models that you can go after have those papers, some models don't. So agentic AI is a way to build an agent to basically do what you want to do and go and search through everything that Big Pharma has, everything that other labs have, everything that may be through publication, if somebody has publicized, and if you're a publicly traded company in biotech that something didn't work, you go through that, and you get all that information, and then you're able to actually discover something that yes, you know it doesn't work for prostate cancer, but now you've discovered that, oh my God, that actually works, let's say, in breast cancer. And you know what's most interesting is that most likely you're going to find that this particular target and the molecule that you have come up with might work in something like immunology or in neurology, something that's completely not related. And that's the beauty of biology. Is that helpful?
Very helpful.
Okay.
And one thing that, for those of you who aren't following this every day, like some of us are, in the past 2 weeks, you might have heard of this thing, DeepSeek and R1. Literally in the past 2 weeks, the quality of agents, I like to call them digital workers, because if you think of them as humans that can do certain things, but they're digital, that the quality of those has gone up dramatically in the past 21 days. So you can go to Perplexity, you can go, if you buy the $200 a month version of GPT-4 Pro, you can put in something like, give me all the scientific papers on harmful chemicals in the groundwater in the Midwest. And it will come up with a 15-page, deeply researched, with illustrations. And we've been handing these things just as a thought experiment to experts in the area who said, give us a grade, A, B, F, whatever. It is routinely coming back with like a B, B+ rating by people who are expert in the deep field. And it generates those in anywhere from about 10 to 30 minutes. That's happened this month, okay? And so this notion of all of us are going to have robots that will do stuff for us. And I believe, and HBS is doing some of this, Jeff's doing some, Busgang's doing some, and some others. Part of the education process will be for you to build your own robots, to share robots with each other, and to create the cohort of robots you will take with you in your career. And this is, so you start thinking about that in the context of the complex problems we're talking about here. It's a totally different liquidity of knowledge.
By the way, when a scientist gives a B+ to another scientist, that's a good thing.
That's
like
about
an
as high as you
A+
get.
in real life. So that's very
absolutely.
impressive.
I mean, scientists are like
They
plumbers.
don't like stuff they didn't come up with themselves.
It's like every time I hire a plumber, the first thing they do when they open the wall is like, who did this, right? Same thing with scientists. Joan, you get it.
No, I was just thinking about what you were saying about children's. I mean, we had Boston GPT stood up, John Brownstein stood it up for us almost a year ago. So I think it's amazing to see how this is beginning to transform the clinical care. And
Absolutely. I mean, what you guys do is amazing. I have to. I mean, we talked about before too. I mean, I think that Children's Hospital is really at the forefront.
Yeah.
very much so.
One of the amazing things Joan was telling me as we're getting going is that Boston Children's Hospital has a lot of incredible attributes. Two of them are they have more clinical data about children and diseases than any other place on the planet. And they also have the most PhD MDs who understand how to both do the medicine and the science behind it. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think that's one of the important components in all this, which I hope came through with the global health work. It's having subject matter experts that also work with the data science teams, and they're speaking a common language. And I think that takes some time, but it's that collaborative work together that really drives the change. And I think some of the things you and I discussed is that, I think of Boston Children's Hospital, where our populations of children with rare and genetic diseases offers so much potential when you couple that up with, what Loop is doing. And we sit in Boston. So with the level of expertise that we have, coupled with the financial markets, coupled with the AI innovation that's coming here, that's developed here. I sit at MIT in the AI for Impact Venture Studio class every Thursday, and we were laughing. I was like, "Oh, liquid AI!" So last year, it's changing so fast, and everybody there is in this like frontier, leading edge. You can easily forget, like the whole world has to catch up. And I think the unique opportunity that we have here in Boston with the coupling of healthcare, financial markets, and AI is incredible.
And can I also add to, Joan, you made such a good point about you have to have somebody with a medical background and data science and the technical background all working together. Mm-hmm. And if I may just share one anecdote. We had this wonderful, amazing team at Google. We had access to a lot of data, as you can imagine. And one day the team comes in and they said, "Oh, we figured something out." I said, "What is this?" They said, "Did you know that if a 60-year-old male has a blood a white blood cell count that is high at 3 a.m., they're 10 times more likely to die than if it's high at 3 p.m. So and I'm not a medical professional, but I just have common sense, and I'm not 22. So I said, isn't it because if you are at 3 a.m., you're probably at a hospital taking your blood, you probably are going to die for other reasons, but at 3 p.m. is just a regular checkup. Yep. But I mean, this is an extreme case of that.
Accurate.
That is
so
true.
accurate.
I'm sure
That
you have
is so accurate.
lots of examples like this.
Exactly.
Yes. Yep. Correlation and causation. Yes, a problem. A number of the questions that folks are asking about is around research, get it, drug discovery, get it. How about clinical application? And there's differential diagnosis clearly
that's
being
right.
one area.
So differential diagnosis, but one of the things we also talked about before is I worked on a project for diabetic retinopathy. So in the United States, in the Western world, for diabetic retinopathy, if you have diabetes and you get diabetic retinopathy, in the Western world, you don't go blind. It's actually a fairly easy fix. You have some
I'm sorry, Luba,
drops.
could I just interject? This is
an eye.
Right, a mapping of your retina, and from that information with the right resolution.
Yeah. No, I'm getting that. I'm just saying,
sorry.
like,
Okay,
if you get this diabetic retinopathy, it's this disease, which is a side effect of diabetes. You go blind.
Yep.
If you don't have the drops. So how do you know you have diabetic retinopathy? You have to go to an ophthalmologist. An ophthalmologist takes what's called fundus images. I'm sure you went to this big, very fancy machine. And it takes a lot of time, and it's a big fancy machine, which they don't have everywhere in the world. So one of the things that we did is we basically, again, as you were saying, we looked at the data from fundus images and basically millions of different points of data, and trained a very simple algorithm to detect just from simple photos, and if you just take a camera of your eye, just simply from that, we've trained the machine in order to detect diabetic retinopathy. And then what we did is we deployed it and we partnered, we didn't do it ourselves, we partnered with a team in India that went into some of these deserts where there's no hospital, nothing there, and then just basically set up these cameras, and you would have lines of people that would go in, take photos of their eyes, and then it will tell you if you had diabetic retinopathy, and if yes, you got the drops and you didn't go blind. So that's one way and one very simple application that we currently have. And of course, that has changed, for global health purposes, that has changed lives of, hundreds of thousands of people. Other applications just in healthcare, in a hospital, I think you wanted me to remember to say this, which is right now, the first application of AI, unfortunately, it's not for patients, it's not for doctors, it's for payers. And that is where AI right now is used, and that's the number one area is, hey, predicting if you're gonna have, bless you, if you're gonna have, even a worse outcome for some of your comorbidities, do you cover you, do you not cover you, these kinds of things. And just very simple claims, detecting if there are some false claims or double claims. So doing that. That's not clinical care, but that is the first application right now of AI. The next application, again, you have to kind of think about who is paying for these things. So if the payer is paying, that's the number one. Children's hospitals are amazing hospitals, so they actually pay for things that are really good for patients. The majority of hospitals are paying for things that make logistics easier. And by the way, it does then is much easier for patients. I wouldn't say it increases patient outcomes, but increases sometimes patient happiness. So for example, triaging patients is something that is used right now. So if you're coming into a hospital and it can see, okay, should you get a bed immediately? Because, we all know the trick, right? You want to be seen in ER. So you're like, oh, I get a heart attack, right? Like everybody does that. So that's not going to work. So AI is, pretty good at figuring out, do you really need that bed? Because that looked like a cut on your finger. It didn't look like this heart attack chest that you're, So it's one of these things. So that's the next application, of course, and that it frees up the beds and that makes things easier. Another application that we worked on is actually detecting who from the ER is going to go to ICU, and another one is who in ICU is going to have sepsis, because sepsis is a very scary thing, would lead to death pretty immediately. if not taken care of. So these are just some of the applications, but I would love to hear from you because I know you guys use a lot of them.
Yeah, no, similar. I think the point you raised, one, is that the first uses, and I think that goes with where the funders directed, because the probability of success is very high, was on the business applications of it. But I think with generative AI in particular, it's opened up a whole new vista, the things that you've discussed. My colleague and direct boss, Dr. Peter Lawson, he's our EVP of Health Affairs, is really driving this aligned intelligence platform across Boston Children's as we start to think about AI integration and really bringing this more into the care spectrum. I think standing up Boston GPT was a very important part of that step. But there's still a long way to go. I think to your Renaissance point, we are only in the beginnings of this, really only in the beginnings of this. And what, from my perspective, when I think about it with the work with Virtue Foundation, is that it's going to democratize care more over time because it accelerates access to knowledge and technology, where you say, I can now identify these medical deserts. You gave the example of diabetic retinopathy. And I get a lot of companies now inbound reaching out, one of which is a AI pathology company built out of Mass General, right? They've got this incredible tech, can read the slides better than a pathologist. They have agents, they have agentic AI running things in the background, so it can read the very basics. The edge cases get put forward for a pathologist to inspect further. This is great. It's built for the US. They've created a camera app that can then attach onto a very basic microscope in low and middle income countries, so that the same level of pathology skill that one would receive at MGB could now be in northern Ghana or eastern Ivory Coast. So being able to plug that into an AI-based data platform like we're building to see where are those labs, then they know where to target to direct that level of technology. So I think it's going to help accelerate the speed at which care clinically improves in markets that have really struggled.
Yeah, this whole notion of the changing of liquidity of knowledge and its application, it's important to remember that there are, about 6.5 billion of the smartphones out there and about another billion of non-smartphones. The refresh cycle is about 10 to 15% per year. And even the low end, Apple, that just got announced this week or last week, has a neural chip on it. So by the end of this year, we'll have 1 billion people who have AI chips or more in their phones. And those are running all the way up to like the medium-sized models, about 70 billion parameters. So this device is changing the nature of the distribution of intelligence. In 5-6 years, we're going to have 5 billion people with it. And so it's really important to think about that. And you guys may be aware of GV, which is an application being launched in India. It was launched, soft launch in August. It was out of Andrew Ng's lab in Stanford. It does differential diagnosis on the phone. Mm-hmm. One of the backers of GV is the largest ambulance company in India, and they are within 20 minutes of 920 million people. So the idea of having this intelligence either in the ambulance or available with that, exactly. And then you start thinking about, okay, well, now I can get longitudinal real world data that maybe I can't get someplace else, and hundreds of millions of people. Gets very interesting very fast. Can I just tell one quick business story on this issue that I think has a kind of nice outcome, or at least I think there's a nice outcome. Turns out that most doctors spend 4 minutes with the patient and 10 minutes with the computer, basically filling out the paperwork, right? Yeah. One of the large payers put in an ambient collection system so that it listens to what the doctor-patient conversation is, it records that, it codifies it, and so now instead of 14 minutes with 10 minutes with the paperwork, the office visit is 7 minutes, but it's 6 minutes with the patient instead of 4 minutes with the patient and 1 minute on the paperwork. So I don't know if that's tremendously inspiring, but it is better.
So I was just actually, I'm glad that you brought this up because I was going to say, what are some kind of the hurdles to implementation of all this amazing data? And number one is certainly Epic, I would imagine. So that's
Judith
a kind of
Faulkner,
number
yeah.
one. So I hope somebody does some sort of a regulation around that. And because
That's the data platform that we use for patient notes. You've seen your physician turn around, put their back to you and start typing. It's generally an Epic.
Yes, exactly. And it's so hard because it's made as a billing system. It's not made as a system for you to input all of this amazing information, data about a patient.
Right.
And a lot of the times information in there, such as, let's say that you come up, you say, okay, I'm an AI. I'm so smart. I will make this new app. And this new app is going to do something very simple, which, by the way, no app can do right now because of Epic, which is if you come in and you're looking at a patient and, okay, the patient is talking, you might even have a summary of your notes because you have some of that information. But let's say that they're taking medication. The patient comes in and says, I have very high potassium levels. And the doctor's like, oh my God, you're going to die. This is really, really bad. The doctor's not going into your whole giant list of all the drugs and all the counterindications of what's happening. And, one of those drugs could actually is the reason why you either have low or super high potassium levels. So wouldn't that be great? You say, I come up with this really cool app that I'm going to upload all of your information about your drugs that you're also taking. First of all, check for counterindications, make sure that you can take them all, and then see, maybe you're coming into the hospital because of a side effect of a drug. That seems like a very simple thing, right? Well, good luck incorporating that into Epic, and into the workflow of the physician. So that is kind of the reality and the first kind of block to this, especially in the hospital systems. Number two are actual computers. So we're talking about, we design a system that can diagnose metastasis of breast cancer better than any doctor. Okay, fantastic, this is great. We have a special software for it. All you have to do, a patient comes in, you have a scan, you upload the software, you click on it, it's gonna do the analysis for you, and wonderful, poof, you can see if breast cancer metastasized or not. Only one problem. You have about 15 minutes to review this slide, and it takes 20 to 25 minutes to upload the program onto your old computer. So that is another problem. I mean, our computers, these systems, the software is designed by people that have really, really fast computers that are also on really, really fast networks, so not tied to, multi-factor, authentication, all these things that they will crash and everything. So there is even simple things like that is a challenge still, but we'll get through it. But that's just the reality.
Completely agree. I would like to ask you a question, Luba, because when I look at this from all the clinical years, and part of what got me interested in some of this is the cardiac patients, seeing that longitudinal decision making is so important to your end outcome, and I see so much of the tech coming out of MIT, and I see a lot of startup companies too. Who are kind of looking at taking this business out of the academic medical centers. So when you start thinking about the primary care piece and Epic and just the grind of it, that you kind of see us heading towards a world of this continual longitudinal real-time collection of your data, kind of the way we do in an ICU, right? I've got my patients wired up for sound, and beat to beat, I'm collecting everything. So, and that's another area in which we're looking at AI, obviously at Boston Children's Hospital, if that's just a treasure trove of data. But I think ultimately we're going to get to a point where all of us are continually censored, like our genome is done at birth. You can predict the directionality of your life and ways in which you might choose to live your life. And then you're collecting things in real time, to your point, John, of your own biology, external factors to your biology, your microbiome, all this interplay, because AI is going to enable it. You're going to talk to your doctor, and as they look at your face, you can read your blood pressure and your heart rate just directly off the image. There's all of this tech coming that I think we're not going to recognize 10 years from now. where we are in terms of that clinical care. But I'd be curious what your perspective is on that.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. I mean, there's voice too, and you can recognize by
Yes,
voice,
voice,
the
exactly.
depression and other. There's so many markers
voice
of health.
actigraphs in
That's
terms
right.
of diagnosing your Parkinson's.
Exactly.
Voice in terms of you can predict the neurodegenerations before it's even happened.
That's
exactly.
Right. And those are all fascinating, and I completely agree with you. And it's going to be pretty hard to integrate that. So even though in 5 years, all of that technology is available now.
Yeah.
And it's even difficult to integrate it into concierge medicine. So there's quite a bit of concierge medicine here in Boston and New York and other areas. And it's still difficult because you are still relying on many of the same very old systems. So as soon as we can get rid of that, that will be utilized. But there's another issue is human behavior. It's actually pretty hard to change human behavior just because we know and can predict that, for example, for you in particular, you have the kind of cardiovascular health that you can be skinny. You think you're skinny, so this is good, but actually you have really high cholesterol and are much more likely to have a heart attack than the next person. But convincing you to actually do something without, and this is what's going to happen in 5 years, you're not going to want to do it. So it's going to be tied to your insurance. It's going to be tied to your employer. So your employer is basically going to either penalize you or probably start with incentivizing you, but eventually penalizing you for not following because they have to pay for it. So it's going to be there, but it's not going to be so rosy and wonderful, unfortunately.
Yeah.
A number of the questions that are coming up on Slido here have to do with kind of truth and trust. So we've been talking a lot about the potential and the longitudinal stuff and the stuff that's available in voice alone. I think if people understood, would blow their minds. There's a woman, Rita Singh, out of Carnegie Mellon that took a 60-second sample of my voice, and with that 60-second sample was able to generate a profile of my face, my height within an inch, my age within a year, my blood pressure within 5 points, my weight within 5 pounds, and that's from 60 seconds of voice, a personality profile, like the whole routine. And that was 6 years ago. So voice is amazing. But how do we think about when we're getting information from patients, how do we know they're telling us the truth? And then when we feed it to the model, how do we know that the model is telling us the right answer?
That's why I went into pediatrics.
Kids are lousier liars. I love it.
No, because all the adults I took care of in medical school were lying to me and lying to themselves. They're like, I don't drink, I don't eat too much, I exercise. I'm like, I don't think so. And the kids, there was so much hope, They're much more honest.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's good. I think you're only as good as your data, and I do think that ultimately the data that really matters is gonna say whether or not you're gonna have diseases, all the stuff that you had just mentioned. All of your family history, your genomics, epigenetics, whether or not you're going to actually get something or not going to get something. It also depends. It's something that you can be monitored, right? I mean, I'm wearing all sorts of monitors here. And you can then predict, okay, this is how much you're walking. This is probably how much you're drinking. So it's going to be much harder to lie in the future because you'll be tracked at all times.
Yeah. I encourage everybody to put a glucometer on and just, they last 10 days, 2 weeks, depends upon whether you get Dexcoms or you get the Abbott version. You put it on and you watch what happens as you just eat your diet across, 2 weeks. I promise you will think differently because you will recognize what each food item is doing to you. And it's actually quite personal. Not everybody's going to react the same way. Like, I can eat pasta, sugar's not really going up. I eat a bowl of rice, sugar's going up. And then you can start thinking about, well, do I really want these insulin spikes? I'm not diabetic, but I want information around how my body is responding to what I'm doing to it every day. Because ultimately, it's that daily decision that's determining my end outcome. 10 years from now, 20 years from now, 30 years from now. So I'd rather make better decisions and have data that's going to help drive my decision making. I'd be happy to sign up for it all right now, for me personally. Other people may not feel that way, but I like being able to action on it. I'd rather know, and from all of my experience of taking care of patients, if you come to me early or you come to me late, my ability to get you to a good location for your life is much better if I see you early. It's much harder to pull you back from the brink. So having that data that we can action on, and I think these are the things that AI is enabling, it is transformative. There are going to be a whole host of issues. Trust, payers, insurance, all the things that you just wish weren't so in terms of problems. But I think we fundamentally have to work through them, and we will end up moving in that direction no matter what. I just think it's moving. The train's moving.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. And we were actually did the Dexcom together with Verily, so we did that, which is the continuous glucose monitor. So absolutely, highly recommended. What is very interesting is, I know, and I'm sure you know, a lot of people that are trying to hack biology, and we all are trying to have an biological age that's much younger than we all are. And they're using the continuous glucose monitors, and they're using everything, taking metformin and all sorts of CoQ10 and all sorts of exciting things, and monitoring everything. Again, it's like N of 100, but they all look pretty unhealthy to me.
Yes.
I don't know if you've noticed the same. They look kind of sickly. I don't know what it is.
They're so worried about their health.
They've biohacked to a point where they don't necessarily look normal.
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
So be careful.
Yes. Yes. No, I'm not saying that.
Yes.
I'm just saying that.
I know. I love the continuous glucose monitor.
Is Jack Dorsey looking good? No, I don't know.
Yeah. But I think that it's that collection of large amounts of longitudinal data, and then you can put analytics on top of that. We're going to derive insights that we couldn't see before. We can diagnose things earlier than we could before. It's opening up opportunities. I think that's
absolutely. And the one thing that I would like, just for especially if you're not in healthcare, but all of us go to the doctor. Some of the things that we use today, I'm sure probably all of you are already using, but you have to know how to advocate, because it's going to take us a while to fix the healthcare system, unfortunately. Yes. And unless, again, I just love Boston Children's, they're amazing. But unless you're going there, you have to advocate, even if when you go to some of the top places, you just have to advocate for yourself. And the only way you can advocate for yourself is, first of all, if you have any aches and pains or anything, then you're going to the physician, just do what agentic AI would do on their end, which it's not doing. You can actually do it. So what you would do is, let's say you have some tests and recent tests, or right now, if you're part of Patient Gateway or something like that, download all those tests and then put them through ChatGPT and say, okay, now I'm having these sorts of pains and aches and pains, and this is what's happening. And by the way, I just started on these 2 or 3 other medications. Upload all of your medication data. It does wonders. You can do differential diagnosis yourself today. Yes. So you don't actually even need somebody to do that for you. If you don't, I have parents that don't speak English. There's so many apps and ways to also do the same thing, but with translation, so that it's real-time translation. It can help you. So it's amazing what we can actually do today. A lot of the times also, if you're in a hospital, and again, I'm hospital sadly, with elderly parents, or if you're in a hospital with children, you're stressed, you're waiting to get your test results. You will get the test results before the physician would get it. Yes. So you just go in, you upload it, again, ChatGPT it. So when the physician finally, an hour and a half later, comes and says what you already know, you can even ask ChatGPT. You either come up with the questions yourself, or you say, okay, the ER doctor is coming, the pediatrician is coming, the cardiologist is coming. What do I ask based on this? So I would say over the next 5 years, it's probably, or at least 3 years, that's the best that we can do, is just advocate for ourselves and our own health.
I'm already seeing that with my patients at Children's.
Is that annoying?
No, it's not. It's amazing to see how it's empowering patients. And I think particularly I see it a lot, moms of patients that are like chronic patients, right? I feel for them. They've been going through health systems, actually sometimes all over the world. So it's a way in which they can really advocate for their child and be on top of things. And then we can dialogue it, because as you said, not everything is going to be 100% accurate out of the models yet, but they're moving in that direction. The other thing I was going to ask you about is MedGemini. I don't know if you were involved with that with Google. I mean, I think, and I presume most people in the audience maybe are familiar with it, but seeing demos of MedGemini and where that has gotten to in terms of being able to enable diagnosis, I think you talked about ChatGPT, but the use of MedGemini by the individual and they're advocating for themselves.
I completely agree. I mean, that's why that's like another
That's
level.
next level.
That's
because
next level.
I want to utilize that and with the platform in low and middle income countries, because it's like in your pocket.
Amazing, yes.
It's amazing. Diagnostician. It's like a physician in your pocket.
Yeah, one of the questions in here is, will AI increase or decrease health inequality? And I would predict it's going to increase health equality because of the availability. Just for those of you who aren't using these models on a daily basis, just a show of hands, how many people are using large language models of any kind, free ones or whatever, every day?
Almost everyone.
Okay, so
Great.
maybe about, 15% of folks. For those of you, a really important thing you have to remember if you're intimidated by these things or haven't used them is you can ask the machine what it needs. Describe yourself. I've never used one of these things before. Here's what I want to do. Tell me what I need to tell you to get what I want. And it will tell you what it needs. Okay, so as I say, the machines talk back. Tell them your intent, and they will help you talk to them in a way that will get you something. And we've never had a technology like that, so don't be intimidated. Well, you might be totally intimidated by that whole idea, but don't be intimidated by using them. I know we're coming toward the end of time here. There are two big things I wanted to ask. First of all, there's a question about the monitoring your glucose. Those are glucometers, right? You can just buy those from the pharmacy, right?
Yes, you can buy those from a pharmacy. I don't think you need a prescription anymore, but I'm not 100% sure. You used to need a prescription. There's lots of companies that also sell them online, and lots of companies that utilize them,
Right.
like Levels Health.
And now the Silk Road guy's out of jail. You could probably get anything you want. No, that's another whole conversation. What are things that people should do differently, given our conversation here, whether it's about their own health, their family's health, their community? What should they do differently?
Well, one thing I actually forgot to mention, which just be mindful, and hopefully we will get this type of technology. I'm actually on a board of a company that does something like that, but there'll be more and more companies, is the dosing. So when we find a dose for a patient for a drug, we often exclude the majority of population. We exclude many women, minorities, so think if you're not a 250-pound white male, just think about it when you're given multiple horse pills of something to take. Just think, is that the right thing for you? So hopefully, just again, awareness, and this is somewhere where AI is going towards, which is optimal dosing for you as an individual, and the more data that we're collecting, the better it's going to become. So even if something has been labeled and has that dose, there is an opportunity to actually dose something for you as an individual. So I completely forgot that, but it's an important thing. I'm not advocating do not take the dose that your doctor has prescribed, but just think about it. You're the doctor. I would be curious what you think.
No, it's a great point, because in pediatrics we dose by weight. And my mother would always ask me to come with her because she had some complex needs. to explain why she couldn't take the adult dose. And it always was dumbfounding to me that we didn't take a similar approach, because a 50-kilo woman and a 120-kilo man are not the same in terms of dosing medications. But I guess the point you made, and the point I would say to everybody, is take agency of your health. I think if COVID taught us anything, it's that. Don't hand it over. You're like co-pilots in your healthcare in terms of thinking about working with your physician. And now you have another co-pilot in your pocket with AI and access to large language models. So I think you can start taking control of your health in a way that wasn't possible before, and to work with your physicians in ways that you're really thinking about it and taking agency for yourself.
Yeah, I would say to folks to pay attention to the edge cases. I think we're going to see innovations in care from the developing world, from rural health, for things that are, I think of a hospital like an old mainframe computer.
Yes.
Mainframe computers are still around, but they're not the center of our interaction with information anymore. And I think hospitals are going to be like that, right?
Yes.
They're going to be the mainframes and the whole ecosystem of mini computers and personal computers and whatever, smart televisions, right?
Yeah.
That we're going to have versions of that in healthcare in terms of care delivery. And my guess would be that's going to happen a lot faster I think of the edge cases, so developing world, rural health, and so forth. And to keep an eye out for those, because I think there'll be some interesting new models that won't be as constrained by a combination of Epic and the payer system.
Completely agree with you. We're already seeing it on the ground, being in some of these countries where there's no legacy system to hold them back. So, and I think what sometimes happens, I don't know if people know the story of the ultrasound. GE developed the portable ultrasound that almost everybody's had a study done on them for something. And they couldn't develop it here because the GE engineers were couldn't get their head around it. They made big machines that cost, $150,000. So they had to put innovation hubs. They put one in India and one in China, and they designed it as a portable ultrasound for that market because they couldn't have an echocardiogram and they couldn't have the types of machines that we had. What was interesting is then they developed that, and it was wonderful. It gave access to ultrasound care to low and middle income countries, but it opened up a whole new market and a whole transformation in radiology in the United States, right? So I do think you're correct. I think some of the innovations that are coming and some of the things I see when we're on the ground will come back and benefit our health system. Yeah.
And the last question I have for you before we go here is a question that, as a grandfather, I worry about a lot, and I get a lot of questions from executives and so forth. What should my children learn and why?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, I think of the same for my kids. I mean, I certainly do not want them to go into computer science. That is no. And my daughter does love computational biology, and I said, stick to biology. The computational, not so sure. I would say that the key fundamentals still, I would say biology and engineering is something that we'll still need to know and still need to innovate around. And having also high EQ. Yes, some people are born with high EQ, but it's something that certainly can be developed. And ability to have leadership skills. And when I say leadership skills, not to boss people around, but to collaborate and get people from, like you were saying, Joan, at the beginning, from interdisciplinary groups to come and work together and also understand enough of computer science. But you're not going to, the way that we build models right now, you really don't even need to do that. I myself don't understand why, I don't want to offend the computer scientists here, but why would you train a machine to literally take you out of a job? That is, because physicians, they're not going to be out of jobs. You still need physicians. You still need somebody to actually physically hold your hand. And machines are still going to have errors. We talked about some of the trust. I remember I worked actually on detecting whether or not you will have sepsis. And when you work on something for so long, you yourself start thinking you have sepsis. So I was very sick, not that sick. I'm sure like all of you have had probably a recent flu or cough that was very, very bad. And I thought, oh my God, I'm dying of sepsis. And a friend of mine who's an ER doctor, she literally just went and looked at me through WhatsApp, and she said, for 2 seconds that you don't have sepsis. And so, but
true.
the,
I can
but
look
the
at
app,
you and
the
say
app,
that,
the apps that I had, maybe I said it's at 70%.
Yeah.
But yeah, she said
Yeah.
no. And she said the fact that you actually looked at the app, you can say 70% and you called me and you're holding up and you're smiling, you definitely don't have it.
You don't have it.
So there's common sense. So I guess
Exactly.
what would I learn is continue having common sense, because sadly that is disappearing very quickly.
Yeah, definitely. And a colleague who is in AI research in exactly this space came up with what do we need for our children.
Yes.
And it was creative, adaptive problem solvers. Those were the 3 key elements that this next generation was going to need, because so much is changing so quickly. So you do have to be able to think creatively, because, as you said, you may be out of a job, but now you have to think about a new one. So you have to be adaptive. And it's problem-solving skills, which does involve STEM skills. And I think those are the things I think about with my own children, preparing them for that world that they're entering that is so different and will be so different.
Sorry, there's something else other than STEM? There's like another...
right.
Okay.
What else? What else is there? I think about it a lot, and my current answer is 2 things. First of all, I think literacy of how to interact with these robots, build them, use them, share them, learn from them, is going to be as important as literacy. So I think that we have to. I want a new Second Amendment, right? The right to bear AI. And that I think we need to teach our children how to use these things. That's one huge thing. It's essentially Socrates at scale. Right? And having Socrates as a tutor must have been pretty good. I mean, Aristotle did a good job with Alexander the Great, I guess. There's that. I think the other thing, and this I think has something to do with the common sense, is to take digital fasts, to desperately seek analog. I think that we have to get, the neuroscience and so forth is very clear. 72 hours in nature, your body changes radically.
Yes.
Your cognition changes radically. And if we don't have those,
Definitely.
digital fasts, I think we have real problems. So anyway, that's my current answer. Love the robots and get away from them. So. Well, I hope you join me. Thank you so much for taking the time. It was wonderful.